Vegas just dropped their win totals for college football teams in 2024, and in my opinion, just dropped Florida State fans a roadmap to making some pretty decent money betting on some of these lines. So let's take a look. We'll start with the Noles here, and Florida State's projected win total sits at 9.5 games. Now, this predicts a pretty good season regardless, and especially during a supposed rebuild year, you can see that the entire nation, even in Vegas, is starting to buy into what Mike Norvell and Seminole are doing right now. Now let's talk about that 9.5. This is actually a line that's going to be kind of hard to argue with here. So go ahead and comment down below whether you're taking over or under on the Noles for 2024. Now, the schedule sets up for a really, really fun season. You have matchups against a couple of newcomers in the ACC like SMU and Cal, but also have a few tough road games like at Miami and at Notre Dame. Luckily, you get both Clemson and Florida at home again in Doak this year. So 9-3 would hit the under here. 10-2 would obviously hit the over. Again, I think this line is in a very fair spot as I could really see both cases happening. I still think it's very possible to go undefeated in 2024 and therefore compete for an ACC title and a playoff run. But it's really hard to predict going 12-0 after losing so much talent to the NFL draft. I think going to Notre Dame in November is really tough. They have a familiar face in quarterback Riley Leonard, but Notre Dame seems to be annually overhyped, a lot like Miami, who we'll talk about here in a second. I do think Florida State wins the state of Florida again in 2024. I do. I think they beat both Miami and Florida. Now, I think it comes down to that Clemson game and then that stretch of ACC play with Duke, Miami, North Carolina, and then going to Notre Dame. It's a tricky stretch to get through undefeated. So I think those are where this schedule, this projection sort of rides on and really by default the success of the entire season overall. I think I am leaning the over here, just because even if you do lose at Notre Dame and then drop a game to a rival like Clemson or, dare I say, an upset at Miami, you still hit the over here. But I don't know. That is a tough one. Again, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Now we'll take a look at some of our rivals' win totals. The Florida Gators sitting at a rough 5.5 win total. And honestly, they have just an absolutely brutal schedule in 2024. Much harder than 2023, in my opinion, and even then they didn't win over 5 games. And on top of that, they lose an NFL receiver in Ricky Pearsall. Just to run through the bulk of their schedule real fast, they open up against Miami. Then they play Texas A&M, at Mississippi State, UCF, who I think may actually surprise a few people this year. Then at Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, at Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and then at Florida State. That's 11 of their 12 games, and you can't point out a single guaranteed win there. And this isn't me just trying to hate. This is an absolutely brutal schedule. They should get a win against Sanford, and let's just say they pull out wins at Mississippi State, UCF, and then one of either Kentucky or Tennessee. Hell, let's just say they beat both of Kentucky and Tennessee. That's 5 wins. If they somehow get lucky and pull all that off and beat Miami to start the year, I guess that hits the over, but that, in my opinion at least, is absolute best case scenario, and I just don't see that happening. Again, this isn't me trying to take a shot at UF by any means. Now, I'll obviously enjoy watching your season burn, but that's a brutal schedule. I hate it for you guys. All that being said, I'm guessing 4 to 5 wins, so I'm going to take the under here and wait for all the Billy Napier hot seat talk. Now, another in-state foe. Let's talk about Miami. Now, they're also sitting at 9.5 wins, which I think is optimistic. I'm not really sure where all this playoff talk is coming from for them, but I think it really is hilarious. I get it. They got Cam Ward, and they recruit well, blah, blah, blah. I think some of you guys buy into Josh Pate's love affair with Mario Cristobal a little too much. It hasn't mattered in 20 years with better coaches, and I don't expect that to change anytime soon, especially with no Neil Mario. Now, their schedule is much easier compared to the Gators, but I still have a hard time finding more than 9 wins. They have a stretch there from the end of September of Virginia Tech, Cal, Louisville, Florida State, Duke, and at Georgia Tech. Now, again, not quite the gauntlet that the Gators have, but just judging by what we've seen out of Miami in recent years, including literally fumbling away the game against Georgia Tech, losing to Louisville, losing to Rutgers, Middle Tennessee State, they just seem to find a way to lose games that they shouldn't, and you have to think that you'll see that again here in 2024. So I'm not 100% where those 3+ losses come in exactly. I do think one will be to Florida State, but I'm taking under 9.5 wins for Miami. The off-season champs always get humbled real quickly. Now, those were fun, but I think it's also worth taking a look at Clemson, who also sits at 9.5 wins. So interesting that Vegas thinks the ACC will be a tight race this year. Now, they open up against Georgia, loss. They also have games against NC State, Stanford, Florida State, Wake Forest, Louisville, Pitt, Virginia Tech, and of course their rivalry game at the end of the year against South Carolina. Now, it's taking some adjusting to the fact that Clemson just isn't what they were 5 or 6 years ago. They did finish 8-4 in 2023, but they also lose a lot of talent, especially on defense, which was the strength of their team last season. So again, you can chalk that week one game against Georgia to a loss. So 2 more losses and they hit the under. I think they lose the DJU Bowl as it's been deemed. So I do think they lose to Florida State, and I'd say probably NC State too. We still have to see what South Carolina is able to put together. Some people think Va Tech will be a sleeper in the ACC, so maybe a mismatch one of those losses there. But I think they finished in a similar spot to what they did in 2023, somewhere in that 8-4, maybe 9-3 range. So I'm taking the under there as well. So lots of interesting lines for Florida State and our rivals. I think Clemson and Miami sitting at 9.5 wins is a little inflated, and we probably see that even shift a bit lower as we get closer to the season. So if these lines interest you at all in a betting kind of way, you may want to go ahead and lock that in. I'm definitely going to be placing some bets myself just to make next year a little more fun. But I appreciate you guys hanging out and tuning in. If you enjoyed the content, definitely drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Keep up with future videos. And I want to hear from you guys. Does Florida State go over 9 wins in 2024? What about Miami or Clemson? Let me know down in the comments, and let's talk Noles.